Please welcome to the stage President and Chief Client Officer for Publicis Group and our host for today, Decisions 2020, Shannon Reed.
Hi, everybody. All right, so I did tell you that I was going to start whether you were here or not, so I know some of you are filing in still, and I wasn't kidding. We are going to start whether you're here or not. We are on a schedule today, and we are on a mission for change. So we are very excited to have you back today. We have a very exciting program, I think, for the rest of this afternoon before we go into our breakout sessions. We are going to start by discussing the consumer journey and the implications for building and executing the evolving consumer experience. Our panel's moderator is the one and only EVP of Global Brand Safety at GroupM, Mr. John Montgomery. Don't forget about Slido. We want your questions. I'll be asking them later. Oh, hi, John.
Well, hi. So let me start off with saying thank you to Lewis, if he's here, for not putting me on the brand safety panel. So I really get to talk about marketing, and but we have a terrific panel. We have Google and we have Xandr, we have Twitter, and it's very, very rare that we've ever had the platforms and the power of the platforms on a panel like this. And we're not going to talk about advertising. We're going to talk about marketing, and we're going to talk about the consumer journey. But before we get there, let me introduce, or let me ask the panel to introduce themselves. We have Justin, and we have Stephanie, and we have Kirk. Justin, why don't you start?
Sure, thanks, John. I'm Justin Graaf. I lead up the research and insights team at Google and am in our marketing department.
Stephanie Prager, I head up global agency development at Twitter.
Kirk McDonald, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Xandr, which is AT&T's advertising, data, and analytics company.
Great, well, fantastic, thank you. So what we're going to talk about is the consumer journey, the path that the consumer takes to purchase. And remember that a consumer journey maps the touch points a potential consumer may have with a brand on the way to becoming a customer. And a consumer journey is very rarely a kind of a one-night stand. It's more often prospects will kind of meet a brand several times on the path to purchase, and the more expensive that brand is, the more touch points, and perhaps the longer the time. It could be 10 or 20 years between dreaming about buying that watch or that car and actually buying it. And of course, the consumer journey doesn't end when you've bought the product. It carries on for life. Smart marketers turn those customers into advocates. So we want to start with Stephanie, but I want you all to answer this question. How has the concept of the consumer journey evolved with the advent of fragmentation, the proliferation of media choices, and the social nature of communications in a consumer-led world? We heard Nick talk a little earlier about how the consumer has led this process. So how's it evolving? And is there still a brand, and is there still an importance for a brand? Steph, why don't you start?
Yeah, sure. So I think, and largely driven by technology, it has enabled speed and immediacy. And so now more than ever, brands need to be much more, and marketers especially, need to be more thoughtful in how they connect with consumers, given the immediacy and the urgency in which everyone is everywhere. You know, many years ago, we were always saying right context, right time, right message. Now more than ever, with the proliferation and the fragmentation, how thoughtful you are with placing that message to a consumer in a given mindset is more important than ever.
I mean, that's absolutely true, but the fundamentals stay the same, right? So Justin, how do you guys see it from Google's perspective?
Well, let me tell you a story about a woman named Liz. Before I go into it, that's not her real name. It's from aggregated opt-in third-party research. But let me tell you about Liz. She's 20, she lives in Texas, and she is looking for, if you can imagine, the best chocolate for truffles. And over 50 days and 50 touch points, she meanders through search and sites and has searches like which country has the best chocolate and how to temper chocolates. And as she kind of meanders through, she expands and contracts her consideration set, which is very, very normal. And we see these queries like searches for best shoes, best cowboy boots, growing at an 80% rate year on year. And that's because people are always trying to find something that's perfect for them, to find the best option for them. And so those fundamentals are when brands are present and they're trying to deliver those key messages all throughout, as Liz, in this case, is going through her 50-day-long journey for chocolate.
Yeah. Kirk?
So I love everyone on this panel. I want to start by saying that, but we're going to make it fun, right? So I have to at some point say I completely disagree with what was said. It's not this moment. I do want to say though, at the end of the day, too soon, but it's going to come. At the end of the day, I think the issue that we deal with, the consumer today, is that we marketers are fighting for the same thing. We're all fighting for reach, frequency, and duration of time spent with the consumer. So it's all about how much time we can get their attention. And as Justin just described, the journey for the pursuit of a low consideration product or solution is weeks or days. High consideration could be months or years. And the reality is we have a lot more signals than we've ever had before, but we don't really know how to use them well yet. So everything from real-time algorithms of programmatic advertising delivery, data sets that we've not really figured out exactly what they mean yet, because who a person is does not necessarily represent immediately what their context or moment in time is. And we are all trying to figure out what the new measurement of relevance of a moment in time. And that's the challenge. Now, I like to think that that's probably made the industry more interesting than it's ever been. And we just need to all test and learn together to really figure out how to talk to someone at the moment we can influence a decision.
Yeah, so yeah, it's more complex, but with all of these additional touch points, Kirk, multiple screens, sometimes multiple screens at the same time, and how are you sequencing messages, communication handoffs? How does Xandr maintain a single tone of voice throughout that? It used to be, legacy media, point of sale, the old-fashioned word of mouth. Now it's literally hundreds of different touch points.
Well, John, thank you for giving me the opportunity to pitch Xandr to this room. So Xandr solves it all. Fundamentally disagree with that point. Xandr's approach, and I do think that all of us have different capabilities on stage, and all of you do the same. We're trying to figure out how to actually make all advertising more addressable. Not just TV, which is where our start is today, by having addressable TV inventory and digital inventory. The reality is, how do you actually connect those touch points so that you can do cross-screen and cross-device messaging for a marketer? So we believe we bring some unique advantages, having an ability to tap into so much of this data set that sits inside of AT&T. We touch 170 million or so consumers, and those consumer touch points translate into a good understanding of at least who people are in a moment in time, and bringing those in sort of very easy to describe, consumer-ready data sets that a marketer can buy into. So that's what we're trying to do, but fundamentally we're invested, just as Twitter is, just as Google, all of you are, in just making advertising matter, making advertising work, make it more interesting, more timely in general. We're invested in fixing those issues that are challenging everyone.
Okay. So Justin, when we spoke on the phone, just to go through some of the questions, we talked about the role of technology, and you spoke about technology as an enabler. Do you want to expand on that? Because I think it's really important. We're all talking about data and tech and investing in tech, but I think your point of view of how to use it as an enabler was an important one.
Yeah, technology doesn't really solve a lot of the challenges for the consumer. So if you imagine what you do as an individual user yourself, you go through a journey not because you feel intent. Like Google talks a lot about intent, and we do a great job of matching that up, so a search to someone's commercial intent. But people don't wake up with intent in the morning. They don't say, I feel intent right now. No, they say, I feel a need, or I would like something, I want something. And at the core of all these consumer behaviors are people trying to satisfy their needs. And we've done a lot of research that shows people turn to Google for 6 canonical needs. And they go through the consumer journey and they meander. Porn? So we scrub for that in our analysis. But that may be one of the underlying needs, yes.
Sorry.
The needs that people come to us for are the drivers of their behavior. So you merge up and down through these consideration sets, and you keep going. So the chocolate journey for Liz being 50 days is because she didn't find what she needed until she did, and then the journey was over. So technology helped her throughout that. She was on YouTube and search and sites and mobile and tablet, and then gets to the end of when she got what she wanted.
Let's talk a little bit, Stephanie, let's talk a little bit about the brand in this. Nick Bryan, I think, earlier on made a point that the brand is as important as ever. But what is the kind of the role in the brand of this, and how do you see it? It's certainly more complicated, but does the role of the brand, is it diminished in any way? Is it strengthened in any way?
I think that the role of the brand is more important than ever, and I would even harp on a little bit something Justin was saying about the need state. I would sooner, if we're talking about a journey, I would sooner start with interests and passions that lure somebody in before they actually realize that there's a need state. And so when you look at the relationship between a consumer and brand, and a little bit about what we were hearing earlier this morning with Nick Bryan and the panel, is consumers are in the driver's seat. And all they want to do is be engaged on a meaningful level. And brands have this unique opportunity right now to bring that human-centric voice to the equation. And we believe, and especially on Twitter, with regards to brand purpose, that now more than ever, users want a reason to believe before they want a reason to buy. And we saw that a lot with the Nike spot that you saw this morning with Nick Bryan. We see that with something, jovial with Wendy's, and how so great they are on Twitter to engage that audience. They're actually engaging less so on like the transactional need, I want a Frosty shake, and more on I love Wendy's so much because it feels so human to me. So I think it's more about brands developing this human relationship because they know that consumers are really driving the power right now. And so just how you engage and how you present that authentic voice to consumers is vital in that exchange.
So all important, but just a hell of a lot more complicated for marketing, CMOs and brand managers to do, right?
Well, yes, it's complicated, but I think that there's nothing more vital for brands than to be a part of what's happening. Cultural movements, and those could be big cultural shifts or those micro cultural movements. But brands, when they are relevant inside culture, that's almost as vital as shifting brand perceptions. Because when you can connect in those cultural movements and tie yourself to something, a passion or an interest, that starts the journey. And it's not these one-off campaigns that start and stop. It's this continuum that keeps going, and then you have this, you're fostering brand love, you're fostering loyalty, and you stay on that journey a lot longer.
And John, I don't think it should be so hard to behave like a human, even as a brand.
Yeah.
So we are all here with our shared humanity, and listening more to try to understand what people need, finding those cues, so the passions, those other areas, and connecting it back to the proposition shouldn't be too hard. I think we make it harder than it needs to be.
Yeah. What would you want for yourself, right?
Yeah. If you can solve that, you can help a lot of folks.
So these hundreds, if not thousands, of touch points, difficult to find the right person at the right time, the right number of times. Kirk, kind of, what challenges do we face in measuring and optimizing to the ideal consumer journey? We've got privacy, we've got permissioning, we've got behavioral targeting, we have identity graphs, we've got certainly a bunch of new legislation coming down on us. How do we measure this?
So I think there is, again, like the most obvious statement. There's a lot more we can do on the measurement side. Right now, the way the industry has grown up, we've measured a set of characteristics that we all know their flaws and accepted. At least all have universally accepted the flaws in the current measurement standards that we have today. I want to go back to the last point, though, and come back to your question on measurement, which is, as Justin describes, if you actually tell your brand story well, your next best customer will find you. It's the point that Stephanie was articulating as well, which is find your brand voice and understand your brand voice, and that will attract your customer, your next best customer. That done well is the way to cut through all of the targets and delivery mechanisms, and do I buy sequence messaging and all the new ad products. What you've got to do is find the medium that allows you to tell your brand story most effectively, and now more than ever before, your brand story needs authenticity, because without authenticity, you're going to get called out. Right? You're just going to get blown up because the consumer has an equal voice. They'll get on a platform and they'll blow you up for actually not being true to who you claim to be in that moment in time. That's the most important thing. Then let's get back to the measurement question. When you actually are telling your true brand story, the relationship that you have with your customers is going to tell one story through some sort of social measurement tools. But then I do think we still have to rely and put pressure on the measurement companies to actually start going beyond what they do today. And I don't want to call out any one in particular. I just want to say in general, we all know that everything from tracking things to a last action, Justin described 50 touch points for Liz in her search. Maybe those 50 points all happen to be related to a start or a query on Google. The reality is, Liz probably woke up and knew that she had some chocolate brands in her mind that she has known for 10 years. She's had a relationship with those brands before. What did that have to do with her final decision or non-decision about the brand she chose or the destination she chose to go experience that? We have to go beyond what we're measuring today, and there does need to be a big conversation happening with the measurement companies to change that.
Yeah, cool. I want to make sure that I save this. We save enough time for this question, and we're running out of time a little bit, and I wanted to ask it of each of you. So a really important part of this journey and the way we all, in this room, the way we all earn a living, involves advertising, and it's a vital touch point on the journey. And we're being disrupted like never before. Ad avoidance, paywalls, regulation, direct-to-consumer, micro-fragmentation. So how can we reinforce the value exchange between advertising and the content that we deliver? It's a critical part. How can we innovate in this space, or do we just sort of wither and die behind a paywall and that hope that and advertise to sort of older and less affluent people? How do we innovate and prove the value that advertising can add? Justin, why don't you start?
I think there's a lot of emphasis on all the things you just described that distracts us from some of the fundamentals about getting the right message, making sure we're in the right place. There are plenty of places to advertise. And I think that our chance to get that clean message across, Stephanie, I love what you were saying about getting the brand voice down. Mm-hmm. That if we get that right, we can find places to speak with folks. And I think that's when we make those connections that matter, and that's when we deliver them products that they want. So our emphasis and advice is usually on that, finding that brand positioning and the voice that works.
So that's still the basics, right? We still focus on the basics of building the brand.
The fundamentals aren't so bad.
Okay, Steph?
Yeah, I mean, you said it yourself, value. I think that whether we're consumers or we're marketers, all we want is to deliver the right value back, and listening to the cues that we hear from from the consumers on what they want. They don't want to. I don't think they want that hardcore sell anymore. They want to feel like a sense of purpose from something, and they feel empowered. I keep going like this because of the presentation before, but they feel empowered to make those decisions, and so the right spaces and places, that's just the tactical expression, but finding what the message is to be put in the right spaces, that's the key to the value. What you put on TV in your beautiful anthemic 15, 30-second spot might be different than what you put in an in-stream environment like Twitter, where you have like a second to make a valuable impression. All impressions, as we talked about, are not equal. So finding what the right cues are and the right message to create that value exchange, I think, is really key.
So Kirk, real quick, how do we reinforce the value exchange for the content that Xandr is delivering?
You know, again, for us, I think we sit in this fortunate place where we are a pure advertising company. So we're built on data, technology now that we own and are custom building to solve the marketer's problem at the same time that within the AT&T family, we hold very dear to us these consumer relationships that touch our mobility products and our content out of Warner Media. So because of that, we're invested in all three equally. So we are going to find that middle road where programmers, marketers, and the consumer actually come together, where they understand that advertising underwrites the content I get as a consumer, and advertising is a part of the narrative or conversation that I want to have with the content I want to consume. So we're on our way, and more exciting news to come.
Great. I know we have some questions from the audience. Shannon's going to take us through some of them.
We do. I let you guys go a little over, so you're welcome. All right, so we have a couple of questions from the audience. I think the first one that we've got highlighted here is evaluate the role. It's not quite a question, is it? Evaluate the role of aggregator platforms like NerdWallet for credit cards. They index high for best type Google searches, but maintain a pay-to-play model. Thoughts?
Justin, do you want to try that one?
Yeah, I was guessing that one was for me.
Yeah.
Talking.
Yeah. So when I read this question, I think, what is the person doing the search trying to figure out? And they're looking for reassurance that they're going to choose the right product. So for me, digging into what is the need driving their behavior is the important part, because they want to find a good product for them that fits their lifestyle, is the right price point, is not going to overcharge them. And I think trying to find solutions for that is the best approach.
Fair enough. What's the biggest mistake brands make in digital social consumer journey?
I think taking the exact same asset and just spraying it across every single space and channel you want to advertise, and not making those slight adjustments to consider the space and the mindset of the user in that given space.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Completely agree.
I would add to that, I think, thinking that the traditional funnel is still alive, I think that's also a big mistake. Yeah. Journeys are as unique as the people who do them.
Someone tweet that, please.
Yeah, hold on to that for later. We'll appreciate that. All right, so there was no mention of D2Cs. How do you see the recent success impacting changes, the journey, and the consumer experience of the overall experience?
I mean, we kind of did mention them in the complication in the last chat, but why don't Kurt, why don't you give us a shot?
I think the secret sauce of D2C is the authenticity of the story to the consumers they go after. More than any other brand story now, all of those companies are coming out from the CEO standing in front of you to say, this is me, here's the problem I saw, I tried to solve this with simple talk, really easy, and it's resonating, and we see them having a tremendous amount of success without hiring success.
And of course, don't tweet that.
Success.
Not tweetable.
Not tweetable. We see them having a tremendous amount of success.
And of course, the DTC.
And maybe other stuff, but hey, brand laugh. And by the way, you guys weren't an interesting panel. We didn't go for Justin, didn't take the bait the first time, so I had to bring it up somehow.
All right, I think that is our time. Thank you guys very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.